All right, welcome everybody to the NWO show, your source for everything New World and eventually more. As we hinted in the pre-show, we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming down the pipe. We've got some new shows coming down the pipe. Our last shows are now up on YouTube. Took some time, edited them out. We took the discussion we had on Siege Warfare, that became its own video. And we also released the rest of the discussion on the very shady topics of RMT and botting. So those were two very deep topics. Obviously, difficult things to cover while maintaining, the obvious we don't support RMT or botting, but we want people to be aware of where the problem actually lies. And yeah, so a couple of small notes before we kick off here. Server transfers are still currently disabled, as far as I'm aware. There is a community Q&A out that is very much worth listening to. It's about an hour and a half long. We covered kind of the highlights of it on one of the shows prior, but I really do want to tell people this is the kind of thing that's worth seeing, because many of the problems that the community is facing are covered in that video in some pretty amazing depth compared to what most other gaming studios would cover. Like, they actually have a whole section on botting and exploits. Like, that's pretty solid to see from a developer. Let's see. Aside from this, I want to do a quick thanks to nwdb.info, our partner. If you guys are looking for additional resources, maps, your resource locations, builds, build systems, and or access to the New World database itself of items and where to get them, that's the best location on the net to find it.
Yeah.
So,
also, if you're looking for certain drops and where they drop from, nwdb.info has all that information. So has guides, all that kind of thing. So definitely go check that out.
there you go. It's also the last bit of the stream name. I know it's a long stream name this week, so but yeah, totally worth checking out, guys. They've got a really good article on umbral shards that went up earlier this month that basically is talking about how you are going to upgrade or how many shards are required to upgrade for this new 600 plus Gearscore stuff. Before we dive into the 625 Gearscore change, I do want to take a moment and talk about the Winter Convergence event, which got extended. It was originally planned to end today. However, it is not ending today. It has been extended to, I believe, been extended all the way out. Convergence giveaway items be available all the way out until January 25th.
Yeah.
So we can assume that that's also going to be a patch day, because they're going to be patching out the winter event and in something else on that day. So we can anticipate that there's going to be some changes with that. We have not received any kind of wave off on a patch for this week. There was one for last week that, hey, because of the holidays, there wasn't anything. That said, we haven't received the same wave off that we got last week for this week, so it'll be interesting to see on that front. Just double checking to see if any of them are still. They've still got a number of them that are online, as far as the community management team. So, like, it'll be interesting to see
if anything drops,
yeah.
in this next few hours, right? I guess.
Yeah, their normal time frame to launch patch notes and stuff for any kind of weekly patch is right in the middle of our showtime by design. So, by our design, not theirs. We pick the time around when they have a habit of doing these things.
It didn't dictate that to them. Like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, that would be a very different relationship.
Yeah, that'd be a very strange relationship. I could not quantify what that would be.
Yeah. We do have some stuff coming up. I don't want to dive into exactly what it is, but we do have something coming up that I think everybody's going to enjoy. I'm just gonna blanket hint at something very positive, and it should be a lot of fun. But soon TM is all I'm gonna say on that one. But let's dive in and talk about reactions to the 625 gear score and mutators on the PTU announcement.
Ah, Jesus. Yeah.
So we covered this, and initially my like internal thought was, now's not the right time to raise the gear score, because in order like here's the kicker. If you were a level 60 right now, like fresh 60, you just got there, you're still sorting out how to get T5 gear, you are not anywhere near the combat capabilities of a level 60 with 600 gear score. Like,
yeah,
it is nowhere near the same. And adding another 25 points of gear score in between you and the end game is going to make being a fresh 60 a very painful experience. So I'm not completely sold that now's the right time to do that, and I'm not completely sold that there shouldn't be more ways to get to level 600 faster.
There's also an aspect of PvP when you're at level 60 that I think, and if you guys have had different experiences to this, then I'd love to know. But like, I feel like the PvP scaling finishes at 60, and then it just does not compute past that point. And just so you know, like, when you're going from gear score 500 stuff to gear score 600 stuff, like the power difference between the two is quite considerable.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you hit 60, don't just think like, oh, everybody who I fight who's level 60 is going to be, it's going to be more about skill than about progression and gear, right? No, like there seems to be definitely a lot of progression between 500 gear score and 600 gear score for sure. And the unfortunate thing about that is a lot of it is also based very much on how rich you are in game. Because if you're richer, then you're able to, purchase. Your purchasing power is significant, and you're able to buy 600 gear score items from people in order to bolster your abilities and your capacities in game. Obviously, at the moment, the expertise system does not penalize your gear, the gear that you have if you have high gear score items. And if you have like low sort of not mastery, low sort of expertise, but that is something that is coming in this patch as well, whenever it lands, and we believe it probably will land on the 21st.
Yes.
So it's kind of awkward because it doesn't feel like you have that PvP scaling, and then suddenly the sort of like the gear score kind of like efficiency, or all the sort of mastery efficiency is going to kick in, as well as potentially increasing that gear score up to 625. So it's like it's just like a multitude of different things like compounding on top of each other that could very well be very detrimental in terms of the experience.
Yes. So some of the other like community sentiments out there is that the gypsum system is both nice but also feels much slower to provide meaningful progress towards getting to 600. So before, just going out grinding gear score on world bosses, it was pretty consistent. You could do it relatively quickly. I don't want to say it was something that happened overnight, but like it was very much something that you could get a decent amount of progress pretty quickly. It obviously wasn't a guaranteed bump on a specific item, but I think there's a number of changes to the gypsum system that need to happen to make it more balanced. So for instance, the gypsum system is reliant on you completing content. So, let's say Outpost Rush. Outpost Rush, you have to get a certain amount of points personally, or you do not get an actual payout for gypsum. You'll get the cash, but you won't get the actual gypsum for it. This is to prevent people from just AFKing the whole time. The problem there is that after you run 2 Outpost Rush, you no longer pull any gypsum. And I really don't like this for a number of reasons. I think that every round of Outpost Rush should give you a ruby gypsum. And instead of time gating, my ideal setup would be, if you want to run Outpost Rush all day every day, you can only get 1 cast of each type every day, but you can build up as much gypsum of whatever type as you can. If you want to be a massive crafter and you're constantly getting the emerald gypsum, you should be able to get that more than once every day. You should be able to use that into all of the different things. I also think that one of the things that needs to change is the minimum gear score increase is too low. Like, when you have a gear score increase of 2, it's like getting unexpectedly hit with a wet pool noodle. Like, you're like, why? Just why? Like, what was I working for here?
Yeah, it is it is an awkward thing, because it's like you expect a little bit more kind of reward for what you've done, and when you get it, it's kind of like, yeah, but not really. Like, it's the other thing is, and sound off obviously in chat if your experiences are different, but like, it definitely feels like the effort and the time investment involved in getting certain gypsum is definitely very varied. Like you have to spend a lot more effort and a lot more time to get like a gypsum and then a cast in order to bump your item, in order to bump your expertise up. Like that time and that effort seems to be very very different versus very different kind of like end level activities. And so if you're smashing your sort of face against like one type and it doesn't feel like you're getting that much worth out of it, like that may be a prime example of an end game activity that might actually do with a bit more balancing and a bit more buffing when it comes to balancing. try and make the sort of the effort involved in getting an expertise bump sort of fairly even across all types of activities in the end game, and you'll actually, you'll have people sort of more happy, like, over the broad spectrum. And I do hope that
we don't have any influence on future patches, although like, we have development staff that we can reach out to. As part of the creator program, we've got direct contact with several devs, and like believe me, like my comments have been forwarded to more than just the audience. I've been forwarding them to relevant people to basically be like, hey, like, I think this would be a good route to go. And there's many of the things that I've seen come into the game, with stuff that we've suggested. I can't take credit for it because many of the things we're suggesting are not new, and we're not the only people
suggested by other people. So yeah, exactly. I wish I could say that like the midway kind of expertise to Gearscore kind of idea was mine, but like I can't say that in any way, shape, or form because I never actually sent that idea to any devs as such. But if they picked up on it, fantastic. If someone else picked up on it and then sent it to devs or put it on the forums, whatever, fair enough. So long as it got into the game, I'm happy with that. Because prior to that, Amazon Games' idea of the expertise system and the sort of Gearscore system would be, if you didn't have the expertise at the level of the Gearscore, like it went back down to the level of your expertise. It didn't do this halfway kind of, between one and the other.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they have that, and there's definitely a better experience than setting you all the way back to your expertise level and that's it. But we'll see.
And one thing to note is it's not just that they listen sometimes. Like McLeod and I have a very, like, we've got a long relationship with Amazon. Like we've been in the community for 3 years. So it's like, long before the game was out, we were playing it, and we were, actively integrated, and we could see that they're developing stuff based on what the players want. The challenge to that is that development takes time.
Yeah.
And I know that there are a lot of people out there who are like, yeah, but like we don't have a lot of time, and it's like, unfortunately, like these things aren't instant. Perfect example of development taking time is go and look at Star Citizen, which just recently confirmed that it's at least another 2 years before launch. Which is being realistic for them. There's there's a decent amount of the game there, but there's much more that has to be done.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I would
from
say
an
2
Amazon
years is probably an
perspective, they've been good at getting this stuff, about adding these things. It just takes time to add them. I think the current thing, we actually saw this on Reddit, the current Umbral Shard system for the 600 plus Gearscore. I'm going to read the comment directly because I actually think I agree with it in its entirety. I suspect that AGS is releasing the Umbral, the plus 625 Gearscore as a way to keep the sweats happy for the next couple of weeks. While that's happening, it'll give AGS time to iron out their laundry list of bugs. Didn't see anything about fixing chat bug after OPR expeditions or the inventory icon mismatch bug, but affecting a lot of players. Still waiting on a fluid weapon swap. Like, functionally
for that fluid weapon swap.
Yeah. Functionally, I think that the system was added specifically for the people who are already at the max Gearscore to keep them going on something.
The concern is that, it
only further leaves behind the casual player.
Yeah.
Because you have to do the massive grind to get to 600 first.
Yeah. and then to get to 625 is kind of like you have to work on top of that that kind of progression that you've got, right? So it's one of those things where if you've already got that, if you're already there, it kind of like it bonuses you to carry on, kind of thing. So it's already bonusing the people who are already like right at the end, the top 1% of the 1%, right? So like the casuals who are kind of like left behind. No, I don't mean casuals in a derogatory kind of sense. Like, everybody here, everybody has like, stuff other than gaming. For the majority of the people of people playing, like have more things going on than playing New World, right? So a lot of us are the casual crowd, but it shouldn't mean that like basically that we're discarded in terms of like our feedback and sort of our enjoyment of the game. If anything, there's more of us than there are of the hardcore kind of crew.
Yes. The other aspect of this is, when I mentioned this, I think early on, is I'm concerned about adding another 25 gear score to what is already a vast difference in between 500 gear score and 600 gear score. Adding another 25 points there, I think, is going to make certain instances for PvP almost unplayable. Because right now, if you are a fresh level 60 and you have 500 gear score, your life is hell in PvP. Like, even in Outpost Rush, the difference in between being, a fresh level 60 with low gear score, killing the NPCs that are level 55s, and a 600 gear score, being able to 3-hit NPCs in OPR is a vastly different experience. So even the minimum contribution stuff is so much different. And I don't want to downgrade anybody else who does. When I say minimal contribution, I mean like relatively easy contribution of going around, hitting trees, killing NPCs during OPR. It's a vital thing to do. That's how you get brutes. That's how you get added damage across the board. Like, it's actually really important. That said, that is also made so much easier by level 600 gear score, because you can just survive. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned that another 25-point difference is going to just make it impossible for lower level 60s and new 60s.
The other thing as well is like, if you're part of a moderately sized group or a group that's like holding territory, and you're somewhat of the more, one of the more casual of the group, like, your capacity, or the like, you can start feeling very you can start feeling like you no longer kind of belong actually in 50 on 50 wars and stuff, because chances are that there are people out there with the higher gear score stuff and higher expertise and all that kind of jazz that would do a hell of a lot better in your slot in the 50 on 50 war than you would. So you start to get a bit like self-conscious about taking up that particular slot when it comes to 50 on 50 wars. So at that particular point you're sort of kind of like denying another big part of the game, just on the basis that you don't play as much. And I don't know, I personally feel that is a crying shame when it comes to sort of involving yourself and being involved in interesting stuff when it comes to New World.
All right, we actually have breaking news.
Is this the new patch?
Yes, we have patch notes.
Fairly light patch notes, but it's patch notes.
So, tonight, 2 a.m. Eastern time, we are getting a patch. This is going to be a good one. Let's hit what's actually in it here. So they fixed the issue where players couldn't gain more than 3 levels of aptitude when crafting large quantities of items at once. That's actually really important. That got called out as a video by I forget the content creator, but it got picked up by Asmongold. So that was that was one of the things that got some solid coverage across the community as an issue, because like if you're trying to power level beyond level 200, that was actually kind of a painful thing to experience. Disabled a short series of work in progress quests which were missing some aspects, most notably the rewards. These quests were disabled for the time being and they'll be re-enabled at a later date. Players who have completed the quest in their current state can keep the XP and gold earned, but progress will be reset so you can complete the quest again for the proper rewards when they're re-enabled. The quests are Edge of the World, Call Beyond the Void, Stirs the Awakened, The Cursed Blade, Senso Noko. They also fixed an issue where players were able to jump cancel the bow firing recovery. And there is now a 0.33 second delay when an arrow is released before a jump can be triggered.
Now, I have a bit of an issue with that. I don't know whether we want to jump into that or whether we want to get through the last through and jump into that.
Let's hit the last few here, and then we'll hit that one next. So they fixed an issue causing permanent disease and slow being applied in PvP. I'm wondering if that's the movement bug.
I don't think
for OPR.
I don't think it is, no. Because the movement bug is kind of like a very different thing.
Yeah, I mean it maybe it'd be interesting to see if that fixed it. Fixed an issue to players sliding when animation canceling Void Blade heavy attacks. Fixed an issue where the wrong mob could spawn for Guardian of the Light. Interesting. And they fixed an issue causing the Surgeon, Pitlord, Delphi, Banes, and Mordisi the Mortician to not drop battle trophy materials.
I mean, things now dropping battle trophy materials is always good.
Yes, very much so. So overall, a small patch, but fixed some interesting things. I think the first and biggest one that we want to hit on is the bow jump animation canceling exploit.
I mean, I don't think it's an exploit. I don't think it's an exploit. I think that. So, Amazon Games has, gone on record to show that, like, there's aspects of animation canceling that they consider to be perfectly fine, and it is how it's meant to be. There's animation canceling that is completely fine in their regard, right? The bow jump, like the jumping animation cancel for the bow, I think is just the mechanics behind it, right, make a lot of sense logically, right? This essentially what they're talking about is you essentially can fire apparently twice as fast as if you jump right after a shooting, and then when you land, you right click to aim the bow again, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're firing twice as fast.
We're gonna
I
actually
think-
showcase this here too.
Yeah. So there's this is the YouTube video that is basically detailed in the in that particular forum post. I personally really like the fluidity and the sort of the style of PvP that's going on in this video. It is kind of frantic, a bit hectic, but very intense. And I honestly feel like there should be more of this sort of style of PvP gameplay in more areas. Mainly because it's like really engaging, and it just to watch, and it must be exceptionally engaging to actually do.
Yes.
Now, if you watch this specifically for when he's like jumping, not dodging, jumping, right? And then keying up another shot with the bow. That's kind of what you're looking for, and that's basically what people are basically saying is broken. But honestly, when you think about it logically, right? As soon as that shot has left the bow, you should be able to do anything, jump, whatever, right? There shouldn't be something that locks you in after that arrow has left the bow, that forces you to walk or stop doing something for a few minutes and then allow you to do something. So as far as I'm concerned, once that arrow has left that bow, you can do what you want, like straight away.
For information on the items that are dropped by the NPCs in question, I believe New World Database has you can look up the actual bosses by name on the database at nwdb.info, and it should have exactly which trophies it has parts for.
If you could probably rewind this a little bit, right? Because there is an aspect of the bow that I think is like truly fucking broken, and it's showcased in this fight, like right here. Because this is a cool kind of thing. It's when that shot hits, like that's a non-crit hit of 3,201 that you saw at the start of that fight, which is just insane, absolutely insane. And it's not like this guy has a glass cannon either. He has, close to 10,000, hit points. Which, fair enough, is not amazing amount of hit points, but it's not a glass tank. Like he isn't glass tank fit. So, and that's the thing that I think is broken regarding the bow, right? Is just the sheer huge amount of alpha that you can get out of it.
Well, I think the problem is the combination where he's dealing several thousand a hit, and he's also got the ability to double the intended DPS by understanding exactly when you can animation cancel to do this. I think that
but the animation
just makes the weapon
makes sense, though.
Too powerful.
Yeah, but like if it comes to like you look at any kind of actual like any historical kind of sort of showcase of what a bow is all about. It is about putting down a lot of firepower, quite fucking fast. It wasn't about long range hyper accuracy, and it wasn't about massive amounts of penetration. It was about putting a lot of a lot of arrows down range into the enemy. Sure, you have these things, you have this kind of like idea of Robin Hood being able to split another arrow into because he was so accurate with a bow. Like that's there's a reason why that's a fable and a fairy tale, like a fantasy sort of thing. It's because it wasn't actually fucking true.
I think the problem is the weapon as intended already fires pretty quick. This is just making it fire like much faster. I'm not saying that it shouldn't fire this fast. It can have one or the other, like either high damage or rapid fire, but not both, because if you can hit for 3k on a hit and you're hitting much more often than any other weapon in the game, then that's a huge problem.
Oh, for certain. Like, so the way I see it is like, a bow shouldn't hit for 3k. A non-crit hit for 3k should not be possible on a bow ever. As far as I'm concerned, anyway. Like, I know it's possible because we've seen it in this video, obviously. I think it's one of those things where it should be, 1.5k crit, maybe 1.2. Potentially, maybe even 1. Considering that you can push that damage out to quite a lengthy range, or quite a good range. Like, your operational capacity with like dealing damage is quite far, and it's fairly direct as well. So it's one of those things where when it comes to sort of terminology, I sometimes jump into sort of EVE terminology, like your engagement envelope, right, when it comes to using a bow, is quite extensive, right, compared to something like, say, a great axe or a hammer, right. Obviously, that's you are sort of in the sort of same ballpark area of things like the fire staff, things like the ice gauntlet, things like the void gauntlet. But the thing is, those weapons a lot of the time can be very a one versus many kind of weapon. So that's where their strength is. A lot of the time, it is basically being able to deal out damage to multiple people rather than just single damage to a single target kind of thing.
Yeah. Musket's in the other boat compared to the bow. Then the musket is. I almost feel like musket is low DPS.
No, well, the thing is, I think the bow and the musket are kind of like in the wrong. Like, they should be flipped around a little bit, because the musket actually has lower alpha than the bow. That's kind of why the guy's using a bow, because he can put down huge amounts of alpha. I genuinely think that the bow and the musket needs to flip around, for the bow to be low alpha, high rate of fire, where that that sort of jump animation cancel is completely fine, and then the musket ends up being the high alpha with the low rate of fire. The only thing that I have issue with there when it comes to the musket is when you've half reloaded a musket and you have to dodge, you have to start that reload all over again. That's the one aspect of the musket that really irks me so much.
Yes. Apologies, I'm doing something else on another screen here.
I mean, there's also aiming the bow as well. Like, aiming a bow has a lot more skill as well when it comes to compared to the musket. It's hit scan, yes, but it should also be a little bit more, like, I kind of feel like the horizontal variance for a musket should be more than the bow, because the bow, you have to deal with, you obviously have to deal with arcing shots, right? So the variance that you have to deal with the bow is much more, on the vertical. So the variance on the horizontal shouldn't be that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you go to the musket, the musket doesn't have any issues with vertical variance, because as Chad's pointing out, it's hit scan, right? But what it should have, because when you're firing a musket, it's a ball, right? It doesn't spin. You don't have the spin, the spin kind of like a stabilization, right?
Yeah.
That you would have with like a modern bullet. It's a ball, right? So it doesn't, even if it does spin, it doesn't create that kind of stabilization. So you should have more horizontal variance for a musket, and basically almost no vertical variance, because because of the kind of almost hit scan kind of potential of it. Obviously that would probably irk musket users, because they will feel like they can shoot at somebody from a mile off, and then the game basically tells them, no, I'm going to deny you that shot. But you have to understand that, like, that's kind of like a limiting factor for how far you can engage. And yes, I understand you can't base a game off real life, but you can base a game off understandable logic. And there's a difference between a game being a simulation of real life and a game basing itself on understandable logic. There's a big difference between those two. But yeah, where do you land on this whole kind of aspect? By the way, you don't really care too much.
I see it as 3 problems. One, again, a weapon can either be high alpha or high DPS. Can't be both. From there, each weapon needs to be balanced against each other to ensure that a great axe is as competitive as a bow, and that you don't have the sniper from the grassy knoll fucking blowing everybody's heads off, as they run around Outpost Rush with no possible recourse, because that happens more often than I'd like to admit. And the other issue is Gearscore, where the guy's running a 600 Gearscore legendary bow, probably with I forget the perk, the one that gives added damage and probably has added damage on several perks to it. The issue there is that if you're going against anybody who doesn't have 600 Gearscore, you have a distinct advantage. And especially when it comes to Outpost Rush and balancing these things for larger fights like that, the game doesn't take into account gear scores when people are going into these matches, and oftentimes you'll end up with one side that has a bunch of fresh 60s that don't have any legendary gear, and you'll have the other side who's sitting there with groups of 5 who have all having a group of 5 versus going in with a solo is a vastly different experience in OPR. But also being level 600 gear score versus not being level 600 gear score is a solid kick in the pants as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's a number of balance problems there. I don't know that there's I'm glad I'm not in charge of balancing them. But the reality is there's a number of issues. There's also a lag issue that chat's brought up a number of times, where people are experiencing lag. They're health bars are not reacting in time with what's actually happening in game, which is probably the most frustrating experience. I know I've run into this several times where I'm sitting there slapping him with a great axe and it's like, this guy's health bar is not moving at all. And it's not like it all comes in as one big chunk. I'm like, I don't understand where my damage is going.
It's like your damage lags and then is basically ignored by the server. It's like, yeah, it's too late, so fuck you.
Or at least just not showed to me. And it's very... It's challenging. Also, you got weapons and dodges that don't make a lot of sense in some cases. Where, if you dodge somebody's weapon, or if you dodge somebody's attack, if you're like, you know, if I'm taking a swing at McLeod and he's still within the hitting arc of my axe, regardless of if he's dodging, I should hit him. Well, the way that iframes work and all of that, you know, on many weapons like the rapier, you can just not take damage at all. Or the Void Gauntlet has a number of iframes in it as well, that it just makes it so that you can go through an entire melee fight and not take a single hit. And like the guy you killed is sitting there going, I don't understand like why I'm not able to connect here.
Well, yeah, because if you're that person, you feel like you've just been cheated out of, like, you know, you've literally just been cheated, because as far as you're concerned, you know, you did a bunch of things, and, you know, your hits should, you know, your attacks should have hit, right? But they, for whatever, you know, some mythical kind of reason, don't, right? And that is perplexing to somebody, you know, who doesn't understand, you know, some kind of, you know, mystical fine-grained kind of aspect of the PvP. And that's kind of like one of those things that, you know, you want to remove from PvP mechanics, is this kind of like, you know, ingrained like secret kind of information as to how to, you know, almost cheat your way to a victory. You know, although, you know, technically it's not cheating, because you're utilizing mechanics, like, you know, very, very particular mechanics that are not obvious to most people.
The bow is not going to be obsolete. It's still incredibly powerful. It just doesn't shoot as fast. You're still going to be able to carve through people. But Dr. Grizzly TV actually says this best here. I could never understand how an AoE stun can be dodged. If you're still in the AoE, you know, like if you're in a shockwave, for instance, whether you're dodging or not, you're gonna get hit with the fucking shockwave, like, or, you know, fireball lands on you. It doesn't matter if you dodged or not, you're still getting hit with a fucking burning rock. Like,
I mean, that is true, yes. I do kind of feel like, you know, the combat needs to kind of get away from like stun, you know, stun combat essentially. You know, bring as many stun weapons as you can in order to basically incapacitate your enemy for as long as they can, so they can just get DPS'd on without being able to do anything about it. Like, there should be some system there that, like, I don't know, like stun, like stun fatigue or something of that form, where you have a certain amount of, you know, you can get stunned to a certain point, and then there's like a cooldown where you're not getting stunned. But like, I don't know, like that would eat into that idea of essentially, you know, somebody coming in, dropping a special ability that has a stun on it, you know, on somebody who is like fully fatigued from stun, and they just able to like walk away from it, right? You know, that would be that situation where you're like, wait a sec, I fucking stunned the dude and he just walks away, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But like, you know, but you need to move away from this idea of, you know, just bringing stun weapons to be able to, you know, dominate in PvP, because it's, at the moment, that's kind of what it is, and it really sucks.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing, like, and I think many people forget this. There's a lot of calls out there to remove or like limit stuns so that like the Warhammer Great Axe meta of just fucking spamming stuns in wars, you know, that goes away. The funny thing is, if you go back and look at like pre-beta with Stagger, like people would people would hate Stagger at this point, because you used to be like, if you took a hit, you were staggered, you know, for you know, a quick second. You know, you took 2 hits, and I think the third hit you could roll away from. But you know, like a lot more death happened under that system, and basically every attack was a stun as long as you connected. You know, wasn't a long stun, but it was long enough to be painful.
Yeah, that just a little bit of stagger that basically meant that you couldn't really control your character. And then as soon as you're potentially able to get control of your character, you were stunned again, right? So it led to people just getting so fucking ragey that they you know that there's a lot of hot takes, and that there was a lot of like, you know, clips of YouTubers just raging out about the fact that they got stun locked, right? But like this is sort of the same problem. Like we're back to almost the same problem again, where, you know, people are getting not stagger locked, but stun locked.
Yes.
So yeah, it's one of those things. One of the weird and interesting kind of aspects of the previous version, where you got staggered all the time, was there was a way of getting out of it very easily, but you had to know like really in depth as to what was going on in the combat system. And to some degree, like the stun locking kind of with what we have at the moment with like stun locking, or sleep locking. I think it's technically it's sleeps. Like, you know, you get stunned and your character basically slumps forward as if it's slept, as if he's gone to sleep, sort of thing, right? So a lot of PvPers, you know, refer to it more as sleeps rather than stuns.
I started up a poll because I'm curious on what you guys think. Is the bow balanced pre-patch compared to other weapons?
Oh, you're going to get some interesting stuff with that.
But it's a simple yes or no, and thinking about it as it is now, prior to the patch that's coming tomorrow, is it balanced or is it not? I'm gonna ask the same question about other weapons too, but.
So just to finish off my point, right? You know, currently how it is now when you're getting kind of sleep locked, stun lock, sleep lock, whichever term you want to utilize, right? There technically is kind of a way out of it. It's just you need to basically almost spam kind of like your dodging kind of thing, because like your dodging will have iframes that will potentially get you out of the next stun that hits you. It's just a question of timing, and sometimes that timing doesn't work out the way that you think it works out, because like, you know, if you have any degree of latency to the you know, server that you're playing, you also have to take that into account as well. So it's kind of, it is super awkward. It's a very niche kind of thing, but it is something that I have been able to achieve even with, you know, 100 ping to the server, mainly because, like, you know, to some degree spamming, you know, your dodging, you know, after you've been stunned can actually work.
Yeah.
I've iframed out of, you know, multiple stun waves coming at me before. It's not pretty, it's not nice. I don't think it's a great sort of, I don't think it's a beautiful way or you know, it's not an elegant solution in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, I mean,
that's my experience.
It's definitely a challenge. Like, it's not clean. I think it's better than it has been. It's better than the system was with Stagger. But I mean, at the same time, if you look at the way, they kind of operated under Stagger, like the way originally Stagger was designed, there was no abilities for weapons.
No.
So, like, you know, that made things very different. So you couldn't just, like, hit them, then stun them, then hit them again, then, you know, put them to sleep, then, you know, like, do the wicked combos that can exist, that exist now, versus in the past it was, you know, you had to hit them, and if you weren't hitting them, it was, you know, it wasn't nearly, it was such a different game then.
Yeah, back with the staggering, like, you know, the reason why it was so prevalent was because you didn't need, you know, 3 or 4 dudes going against one guy. Like, it could be one dude or 2 dudes, like, because you'd end up getting stunned just by the auto attacks from the hatchet, right? You'd be stunned. You'd be staggered just long enough for the next auto attack to basically hit and stagger you again. And it was just one of those things where people raged like crazy about getting staggered by hatchet attacks.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things, and chat brought this up rightly, is resilience stacking, which reduces the amount of critical damage. That can be a powerful thing to do in certain circumstances, but it can also leave you vulnerable in many other circumstances. So it's both good and bad. It's good if you're going against a bow who's set up for, massive crit damage. But it may give you some other issues elsewhere. Yeah. I think we're closing in on the end of this poll here. Very, very curious to see where this lands.
At the moment, it's looking more like a yes, but don't let that sway your vote. Like, vote how you feel, not how you think the majority of people feel.
So it looks like yes,
look like it's a yes.
13
does
to 8.
Look like a yes, but it is a little bit controversial. Let's put it that way. It's not a straight up clear win for the yes on that one. Yeah. Now that we've gone sufficiently on that tangent for the bow, the change to the bow, as it were, with regards to the animation cancelling while jumping.
I've put up a new poll: is the Void Gauntlet balanced?
Ooh.
Curious to see what. I have a feeling I know exactly where this one's gonna go, but I'm not gonna skew it with my thoughts at the moment.
I'm not going to say anything, until the actual results come in, rather than previously. So, yeah, fair enough.
So let's talk about community discontent at the state of the game.
Not regarding the the PTU announcement, but like current discontent of the game. Yes.
So one of the big things that I think people complain about is that the faction system really doesn't make any sense. Like it's there, doesn't, but it doesn't really do anything. And arguably speaking, it would be significantly better, in my opinion, to forego the faction alliances and just have every company for themselves.
Yeah.
I think that would be a better system, and it would create a little bit more of an opportunity for people to forge alliances, themselves, not just because, oh, hey, we're both in Covenant, let's be friends, or we're friends because we're in Covenant, not because I like you, but because we're the same color. And it's like, that's not a decent political tie. Like, our server has proved that number of times at this point, but
yeah, it definitely has. Like, and there also ends, having that kind of system as it is at the moment, like, it ends up in that situation where you can sometimes have, groups that are right arseholes that unfortunately are in the same faction as you, and you can't do shit about it.
Well, and from a PvP perspective, it would open up the PvP options to everyone. Regardless of faction. You flag up and anyone and everyone can kill you.
So I went back I went back into the sort of like the the dev kind of patch notes and stuff like that they had prior to the actual release of the game. You know, where they were coming out with with patch notes as to and introducing systems and this and the other. And when they were kind of coming in and introducing the faction system to people, right? One of the key aspects of the faction system, with regards to why they're bringing it into the game, was this idea that being in a faction means that you will always have a brother in arms, near to you, and if you're fighting somebody. Or you're trying to fight off a couple of people, and that you are more likely to get, somebody from your faction run by, see that you're in trouble, and come and help. That only really works if you're, all flagged up. If the guy who's running past, who's like in your faction, isn't flagged up, he is not going to help. And even if he does want to help, by the time he gets to somewhere where he can flag up and come back and help you, you are like 99 times out of 100, you're dead.
You're probably going to beat him
dead.
there.
and he's going to come back. Yeah, he's going to come back to that area, find that you're dead, and then get snared by the two guys who killed you, and he's going to end up dead again. So it's one of those things where, like, even one of the fundamental aspects of the faction system, one of the pillar kind of reasons why they brought it in, is just not functioning.
Yes. So basically the faction system is just it's confusing. The gear in it is not end game gear.
Nope.
It's nowhere not
near
particularly useful, and the only things that you really need to level up for so that you can get chisels for expeditions. And
which, to be honest, they can have a general store
in the late game.
And to be honest, you don't need a faction store for that. You can just have a general store that gives general chisels out. Like, all the chisels are the same. They're not like Covenant chisels. They're not like Marauder chisels. Like, they're just Asmodeum chisels, right? So you don't need to have a faction specific store for that. Like, so
frankly, I don't think you should have a store for them at all. I think you should just be able to build them and call it a day.
And have them not be fucking bind on pickup when you actually make them.
Yeah. No, enough with the bind on pickup. Just let people sell stuff. Like,
honestly.
Also, as the poll ended here, is the Void Gauntlet balanced? 14-6. No, it is not balanced.
Well,
which I very much agree with you guys. It's not balanced at all.
Yeah, I was expecting it not to be balanced because it is the newest weapon, and to some degree, developers have a bit of a desire to see a new weapon actually get use out of people actually using it, kind of thing, right? So they invariably end up making it a little bit OP, so it gets adoption. But I expect it to be, reined back a bit.
All right, I'm starting another one. I'm curious, how many casks do people make per day? Like, are people out there actually doing, like, the maximum with the gypsum system, or are you like me and you're getting 2, maybe 3 a day? My next question after this is going to be what's your average gear score bump, because I feel like mine's fucking 2. And it's really painful. Like, this isn't one of our bullet items for our show notes here, but like that's honestly one of the things that's pissing me off the most. Is like I get 2 or 3 gear score bumps a day if I'm not lucky with my outpost rush, and I feel like it's gonna take me fucking forever to get to 600 gear score because I only make 2 fucking points at a time.
Yeah, that is a pain. That's kind of one of the reasons why I'm like trying to go with the whole like crafting route now, because I kind of feel like it's not really gonna pan out in terms of like the amount of stuff, the amount of like levels, and the amount of like mastery levels that I need. Like I'm thinking that crafting is probably the better way to go. For consistent results.
Yes.
High, a lot, more than just 2 or 3, at a time, or per day. Let's put it that way, not at a time, per day.
So here's another major issue. Corrupted breaches and the entire point of the corruption system for territories appears to be entirely pointless, and that you don't make any impact whatsoever on whether or not there's going to be an invasion or when that invasion actually takes place, regardless of how many you run or don't run.
But how many like mages you kill, like when a territory is having more and more breaches occur, it doesn't seem like that it makes any kind of difference whatsoever. There was I think there was a post that kind of on Reddit that kind of said like something similar, but essentially that it was like the war on the corruption seems to be just as pointless as the war on fiber, right? It's like it's or the war on hemp, right? It's just like there's no fucking point to it whatsoever, because it keeps on regrowing, and there's no you don't have any influence in it whatsoever. Like it'll if a territory is in danger of being invaded by the corruption, it's going to happen. It doesn't matter how many breaches you clear.
Yes. And on the other side of this, when it does happen, comes into another problem, which I believe we were the first company to report this as a problem, and we're told that this is not an exploit, but it still comes across as kind of bullshit. So the territory owners, during an expedition, the system is supposed to pick, territory owner can pick 10 people, and then the other 40 are picked randomly for expeditions. This is, of course, not how that turned out, where it will pick, you'll pick the first 10, and then from there, for invasions, you will consistently kick people from the army until it refills with all of the people who are, best in slot geared players with maxed out trophies and all of that for a preset composition that ends up in being a 100% victory, because there's no risk to it, which also means the territory isn't requiring you to spend more money on it, which means the territory makes more money over time, which increases the amount of money the company makes, increases the amount of money that they put into their people to get them better geared, which only, makes companies that own Windsward and Everfall and, these high value territories only that much more valuable.
Exactly.
3 is the prevailing on the gypsum cask per day.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
That sounds about right. At least that like you're hitting the average there, mate. Well, so, and one of the kind of, I think one of the annoying things about specifically the invasion kind of like sign up sheet and all that kind of stuff, the roster, right, is that this has been, this has been something that we've asked, the community, when I say we, like we've asked Amazon Games whether this is a bug, whether this is unintended behavior, and they've said no, this is intended behavior. This is the systems are working how we want them to work. And so it's like, okay, so you want us to be able to easily, seemingly, use this system to kind of like edge out people who haven't done invasions and only kind of take this group of 50 that is basically like heavily set to be able to win invasions easily every time, and therefore not have territories downgrade and have places like as Ace said, like Everfall, like Windswood, make absolute tons of money. Yeah, have to pay the taxes for this fully upgraded capital kind of settlement, but still walk away at the end of that not having to upgrade anything, and come away with like a huge amount of like profit from taxes. Like that is, if you did not see the show that we had last week, that is causing issues, like some severe issues, in the game. So, was there anything that you wanted to add on to that?
No, I think that's about it. I think the other thing that's causing a huge amount of issues is the housing tax.
Yeah.
That needs to no longer be a thing, where it's costing people less than what is actually being given to the territories. That needs to go away rapidly. Because the territories are now making a lot more money now that the servers are merged, and yeah. I've asked a new poll in chat is what is your average expertise increase per bump? This is what you feel it is. Like, you feel like your expertise is going up by how many points each time it goes up? Like, what do you feel like your average is?
Okay. I mean, in all honesty, I haven't been doing too much in that regard, like in terms of actually applying the casts that I've been making.
You can only use them once a day.
Should use them, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just been like laser focused in concentration in like smashing through crafting at this particular point in time. So yeah.
The other point of contention for the community is actually the gypsum system, which we talked about in detail earlier. But like, my biggest issue with it is it's double time gated. Like, if somebody wants to run Outpost Rush, let them run Outpost Rush all day, every day. Don't gate the orbs, gate the cask. So, hey, you can have one guaranteed increase on this item per day, but you can use Ruby to get all of them if you want to play that much Outpost Rush. That's how I feel about it. I could be wrong. I actually think that would solve many of the problems, and it would increase the number of casks per day pretty dramatically, because people would have a reason to be playing Outpost Rush more often. They would have a reason to be going to do all these things more often.
But it's also along the lines of like, how the actual, how the cooldowns kind of like, are implemented as well, because it promotes people playing every day rather than, playing on the weekends, for example, right? Because the cooldowns are not days, they're hours.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't think that there should be cooldowns on. I don't think there should be cooldowns on anything other than the casks. So run the content, get as much gypsum of any type as you want, by playing a large session. Then then build your orbs out of the gypsum. Then the time gate is every 16 hours you can get a guaranteed bump on a certain item.
Well, you see, that's kind of like where I think maybe you and I differ a little bit, because I kind of feel like in order to you can keep the sort of like the casual crowd in there and still not like give essentially the the hardcore crowd like the win in that regard. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be a case of like you craft one cast and then you have a cooldown for X amount of hours, right? You make it so that you can cast up to say 6 six casts, and then you have a cooldown of close to a week, right?
Yeah,
because it works almost the same way, right? If you're on every day, you can cast one every day, and you won't, or you can cast one every day and you'll be fine. But like if you cast up to 6 in a week, or 6 within 6 days, then you hit a cooldown.
Yeah. And I mean that fundamentally we're saying this similar things, just like you're saying that the time gate on the last one should be, instead of 1 per day, do 1 per day per week and front load it to say you can do 7 of these. But if you do 7 right now, you're not going to be able to do any for a week.
Yeah, but that should be fine for people who play on the weekends because they're busy for that week. They're busy throughout the week, and so the weekend is when they start gaming, kind of thing. Yeah. So it'll be one of those things where you're appeasing the weekend kind of more casual crowd, but like you're not basically allowing like the hardcore crowd to just grab that ball and run with it, right? They still have that capacity to be able to cast one every single day, during that week. So it's not like you're artificially like limiting their capability.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is on the front end, because of the way that Gypsum is set up, where it's earned, like Outpost Rush is set at 2 of them to turn it into an orb, and they're all scaled on various different numbers of Gypsum required for each of the different activities. They're all time scaled to be close to the same to getting an actual bump. I think from there, just let people go crazy, let them earn as much Gypsum as possible, because it's not, based on the poll in chat, people feel that their average expertise increase per bump is 1 to 2. Which, if that's what the thing is, that's the impression people get because they see that bump and they go, "What the hell?" Like, it's like it's
like I got a bump, like
good.
That isn't. Yeah, it's like I got a bump in my expertise, but like that doesn't feel like a, it doesn't feel like a good
progress.
Value. Yeah, it doesn't feel like value for the amount of time that you put in.
Yeah, it's like, oh great, I got a guaranteed bump, but like that guarantee is like, it's like a guaranteed bump from like a shady salesman, where it's like, it's technically yes, but in the spirit of actually increasing my gear score to where I want it to be, it's not what I want.
It's kind of like sometimes when you open up a bank, like a new savings account, right? And they offer you like, we're going to give you like 0.5%, and you work that out like, oh yeah, well if I put X amount, per month kind of thing, and like, just maybe if it's just like a small amount kind of thing, you're sort of thinking, I might get something, okay out of it, and then you work the numbers and you go like, oh great, so at the end of a year's worth of like, just regularly putting some money, into this thing, if I congratulate myself by going and have a fucking coffee from like at a coffee, fucking Starbucks, that's all the money that I fucking saved from the all the money that I've sort of also accrued from the percentage just gone. Like, kind of feels like that. It feels like all of that kind of like effort in just storing that money away or sort of doing that sort of stuff, it is not really worth that effort. It's it's bad. So we've been kind of talking about like some mid-level kind of aspects of the game that are kind of a bit of an issue at the moment. Like they have a lot of issues. Like we've talked about like the about the faction system, the faction system and how it's just like not really functioning how it should be. We've talked about like how corruption is basically just not really, it's not dynamic. It doesn't we can't affect it in any way, shape or form, in any kind of real way. meaningful way. It doesn't have any kind of meaningful effect, on us as such. And it's being negated by a lot of aspects of how, players are sort of progressing and, defending their territories and stuff. A lot of the like community sentiment about the game at the moment is a lot of surface issues as well. It may not feel like surface issues when it comes to sort of like PvP stuff and the clunkiness of PvP at this point in time, but like, those are kind of the reason why I call it not like the reason why I call it kind of surface issues is a lot of it is down to the nuance of like, like adding a few kind of, taking away some cooldowns, adding some cooldowns, sort of like taking away some iframes, adding iframes, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's sort of small stuff that like it is more sort of like database changes, rather than sort of like, large mechanic kind of issues, right? One of the major ones, I think I actually just talked my way out of my point, or talked my way out of remembering my point. I do this sometimes. It's fucking annoying. It's as annoying to me as it is to you, so I apologize on that one. It'll come back to me in a second. It'll come back to me in a minute, but I hope that A's is able to fill the
Yes.
fill in
In
while
the
I'm trying
meantime,
to remember it.
For those that for those that haven't collected these yet, there are drops ongoing for New World, for Wheel of Time. If you're watching Twitch, all you got to do is click the link in chat there. Make sure that you look at the New World campaign, and make sure that you are collecting that gear, because there's a bunch of skins available. That tonight, I believe it ends at like 3 a.m. So there's still a chance to get most of this gear. It takes an hour per thing, but you can definitely still get it. So make sure to do that.
Really lovely.
Can't
remember.
You got to make sure that you collect it from that inventory screen too.
Yeah, you definitely have to.
Can be kind of painful. Not an ideal process. I wish it was a little bit more obvious. And of course, I want to take a moment, thank the number of people that have actually hit subscribe during the show. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
The support is of course 100% appreciated and is going to very much assist us in developing what will be more shows more frequently on a wider variety of topics. So like we mentioned in the pre-show, we're going to be expanding to a variety show that'll cover New World, but also many other games, the gaming industry, entertainment, basically all things nerd. It'll be a great time. From there, we're also going to be starting up some Lost Ark content. For those that don't know what Lost Ark is another game that's being brought out by Amazon Game Studio, are republished and translated with significant changes for the Western market. It's a Korean MMO that's been out for about 2 years, and is actually highly popular in all of the countries that it's been out in. And in the last 3 months has actually been experiencing queue times because of the added number of people wanting to play. So it's success over time and built into something actually really great. Aside from that, I want to thank everybody who's hit the follow button, all the people who are joining the Discord, having fun there. After the show, we normally chat with people in the Discord, so if you want to hang out, we'll be in the public chat channels just post-show. McLeod, did you remember your point yet?
I did remember my point, yes.
Okay.
So this is going to be interesting because I'd like your point. I kind of know a little bit about how you feel about this, but I'd like to know whether you've kind of thought about it a little bit more or not. And obviously, of course, out there, if you guys have any thoughts on it, definitely let us know. But my thought process is along the lines of, you know, progression in New World, right? Once you get to 60, like I think a lot of people are, you know, very much under the impression that, like, you know, all the content that's, you know, unless AGS has, you know, something else planned, as far as we're concerned, as far as we know, it seems as though the content that we're going to be getting, like any new content that's going to be coming up, it's going to be, you know, end level content. It's always going to be, you know, level 60 plus content, right? Whether that's increasing gear score, whether that's end level dungeons, whether that's, you know, sort of mutators on those dungeons, all that kind of stuff. Like, it always seems to be level 60 plus content, right? And it's kind of a shame because a lot of people actually really enjoyed, you know, obviously to sort of varying degrees, you know, actually enjoyed the progression up to level 60 compared to when you're at 60 and the, you know, the end game kind of content available there. It's a real shame that you have to make a new character in order to actually experience that again. A lot of games have kind of come up with ways of being able to, you know, get a lot more out of that content, out of that sort of like progression-y kind of content. A classic example is Call of Duty with their prestige system. So you got to the sort of like the you know, you leveled your way up, and then when you got to it, like, you had an option, a choice as to whether you wanted to prestige, and you got that kind of prestige kind of like notoriety, but that put you all the way back to, like, you know, starting from scratch. And so you're able to play through that kind of stuff all over again. I'm kind of wondering, you know, if people would enjoy that kind of system in New World, so long as it gave you some kind of bonus, you know, to prestiging in some way.
If it allowed you to multiply the XP by 2 every time, then I would.
No, that makes sense. Like, and obviously, you know,
the most enjoyable part of the game, and we've talked about this a number of times, the most enjoyable part of the game in terms of the leveling process is between 1 and 30. Like, yeah. Then it starts dropping off as like, okay, this is a slog, like, this is going to take some time.
Yeah.
But, you know, functionally speaking, like, if you could make it less of a painful grind in the late game, by, you know, having something like that, that would be, I think that would be bad. You know, would give a reason to replay, you know, the lower end content.
And in all honesty, like, I'm not really a massive fan of ranked. Like, ranked can be its separate thing if people want to be, like, don't have it forced on you, and don't put it into a necessary, you know, thing for progression, because, like, that's kind of how I feel like the mutators are starting to go. And, like, if I have to sort of, you know, deal with, like, you know, the degree of toxicity that would be elite people kind of only wanting, you know, the very best kind of people to go on a mutated expedition run, and, you know, they're very likely to be extremely toxic if you fuck up in any way, shape, or form. It's just going to be, you know, that's not how I, you know, if I need to do that to progress in some way, shape, or form, then that is just going to put me off playing the game. Like, if it's something that's separate that I can opt into if I want to, fair enough. You know, you have those toxic guys kind of go and, you know, do their thing separately from the game, you know, but don't force that on me as something that I have to go through in order to progress in the game in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I just feel like a lot of the content that, like, brought us up to 60 was, you know, had a lot of attention, had a lot of heart put into it. It's you know, it's used up so quickly. Now, I feel like if AGS could find ways of reusing it, that'd be great.
I actually think one of the other things I think would be really cool to add, specific to like Outpost Rush, would be like a hardcore mode.
Oh yeah, no, we
like,
did talk about
remove
this.
like turn on friendly fire and increase damage by like 300%. Like all of a sudden, like, you know, the guy with the ice gauntlet is both your biggest ally and also your biggest pain in the ass. Like,
you dropped a fucking.
also, there would be a version of it that would basically just be muskets online, where it becomes like Call of Duty but OPR, which could be actually quite funny.
Oh man, that'd be insane.
Yeah.
Do you think OPR could do a gun game?
I think so.
You know, you start off with like, you know, a certain weapon. You sort of you start off with the sort of easy weapons, like maybe the ranged weapons, and then you kind of like progress all the way back and up to like, you know, melee weapons.
Like, you know, that's the thing. Like, those kind of things would be relatively easy to code. Like, relatively easy investment, like, and they're infinitely replayable. The problem is that there's barely enough people signing up for Outpost Rush, so they would need to create a global queue for Outpost Rush instead of a server-based queue for Outpost Rush, which I think would change things pretty dramatically for the better for Outpost Rush altogether.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I had that kind of thought was just because gun game seems to be like, I remember gun game when I was playing, you know, things like GoldenEye and like, you know, CS:GO Source, right? You could still play gun game in so many different games now, like, and it's kind of it's clearly a mode, or clearly a game, kind of a game mode that, like, you know, has its roots in people enjoying it. So I mean, surely you can, you know, develop a form of it for Outpost Rush.
Oh yeah. Well, like, you know, even if it wasn't Outpost Rush, just like open up a PvP map where, like, you can do something like gun game, where it starts you out with, you know, a sword, no shield, you know, and you have to get a kill, and once you get a kill with it, then you gotta get a kill with a great axe or a hammer, or, you know, and it cycles you all the way through until the last one. You know, like, those kind of things, like, you know, steal, like, I don't want to say steal content from other games, but, like, at this point, everything is a revision of other games. Like, those kind of things would be played over and over again, just as a time killer. You know, put a minimal reward on it, because it's not going to take that long, because there's not that many weapons. You know, I think that'd be fun. And it would add more content that is replayable content, which is one of the challenges. I also think that they need to make sure that they're adding more level 60 dungeons. Like,
I mean, I think we know that that's happening, right?
Like, we know that there's the one in Brimstone Sands. I believe it's called the Enclave. You know, that needs to come out sooner rather than later. I know it's going to be like a huge thing when it does come out, but it's really, really going to be like a breath of fresh air. And I mean, like, you know, this ties into like some of the other community sentiment around the whole, like, keys for keys for dungeons. You know, no. Just stop gating it. Just let people run the content. Like, you know, make the queues for the mutations only, so that it becomes this, you know, hey, high reward, but you've got to buy in for it. and also drop the cost of the buy-in dramatically, because it's too expensive to build an orb.
Or even better, well, no, not even better. Actually, no, I don't know. Like this has a whole lot of issues with it, but like it would be interesting if you could, you know, if you could bet a coin on, you know, how well you did, or you know whether you're able to do it at a certain speed or kind of thing. And if you did, then you get a payout. But you know, that's kind of getting into the realms of like gambling, and you know, you have to make sure that that is not something that people are going to get addicted to, or that like people who are younger than 18 are going to start like, you know, having issues with, like, you know, that kind of stuff. Like a dungeon wager. Yeah, like a dungeon wager to some degree. Fine. But you know, you have issues. You're obviously going to get kind of issues with, you know, people kind of saying that like, you know, does this promote gambling to you know, people who are underage playing New World? So you'd have to deal with that kind of aspect of it.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that could be interesting, at least under the current system, would be like some kind of like escrow system for orbs. So like on completion of the dungeon, the creator of the orb is paid X amount of money from the people who bought slots from them. You know, to prevent them from getting booted, and you know.
Yeah, I think you kind of need that sort of stuff.
Like, I think something like that could also be a meaningful ad. It shouldn't need to be a thing, because like the orb itself should be easier to make, and I can't imagine that they think that there's enough dungeons being run right now. Like, they've got to be looking at that going, hey, this number seems low. Like, how do we get people to do this more often? You know,
remove the fucking...
Because I mean, there are instances in which you want to change people out in the party where like, I have to leave and I've got to do this thing, and I want somebody to come in, or like, you know, I'm willing to give up my spot because somebody who's much higher gear score can come in and help you guys finish this. You know, like, because I've been in, you know, back when Depths was bugged as hell. You know, it sucked. Like, you needed a couple level 60s to break through some of the bugs. And like, I can remember running it and being in the last room with Thorpe and just being like, well, this sucks. Like, you know, running it 15 times, watching my gear break over and over again, and just, you know, okay, hey, you know, can somebody switch out with me so at least somebody can finish this dungeon?
Some of the issues when it comes to this kind of you know, this side of the gameplay is, you know, whether you should be forcing players forcing players into content that they don't want to do, or letting them do the content that they want to do, you know. And that's kind of like, you know, if you're making the you know, these keys kind of thing, like, should we be forced to do the dungeon, or should you be able to give that to somebody who wants to do the dungeon, right? And I'm very much of the former of that, like, allow them to make those things and give them to, you know, trade them to people, and have those people use them to go into the dungeons. Don't force them into gameplay that they don't want to do. If you force them into gameplay that they have to do every single time, then they start to get a resentment in doing the thing that they kind of like to do, because then they realize that they have to end up in order to get any kind of value in what they're doing, they have to go and do this thing that they really don't like doing. So it's kind of like, you know, just let players do what they like to do. Don't force them into doing things that they don't want to do. If it's a case of you feel like, you know, they haven't tried stuff, so they're not sure whether they may like stuff, then make those things, you know, make the value of doing those things as worthwhile as the other stuff, right? And because that's kind of like one of the aspects of one of the reasons why, you know, people did certain content, was it was more valuable for them for the time that they, you know, spent doing them. You know, the other stuff wasn't. Like, the only reason why, people would be running, dungeons and arenas and stuff like that if they can. It is to get this the other types of gypsum that are available for them to get the bumps. Like, you've added value there to some degree, but those like that have value proposition between all of those various different things are not the same. For the amount of time and the amount of energy invested. And, AGS need to kind of figure out that value for the time invested and adjust it so it's the same. And ideally you want to boost things rather than nerf things at this point in time, because people don't like grinding, and they definitely don't like the fact, like they definitely don't like a nerf that means you have to grind more. Like, that's one of the main reasons why people are reacting a little bad, like in a sort of bad way to the mutators and the 625 gear score kind of increase. Unnecessarily.
Yeah. So, and I think there's obviously a ton of things that could be changed that could make the game aiming for more enjoyable, aiming for an additional aiming to make content more accessible, aiming to the best phrase for best way to refer to children right there.
Never change.
Yeah. So that's it. I think that has kind of hit the end of our planned show.
Yeah, I think so.
So I want to say, again, want to say thanks to everybody. I want to stay here, don't leave. I want to do something fun. So first and foremost, after the show, we're going to hang out in the public chat in the Discord. Feel free to join us. It'll be a good time. We'll talk New World. We'll talk whatever people want to talk. But we're going to raid a much smaller streamer. And like just have a blast. Like, make sure you guys spam follow. Make sure show him a lot of love. Like, he is not expecting this. I don't believe that he knows us at all. And he definitely does not see this coming. So, but he's still leveling up. I think he's doing a good job. He's seems like a good guy, and I just want to make his night. So, I want to thank everybody who's hit subscribe and follow on our show. We look forward to seeing you guys anytime there's breaking news. We're going to be going live, but stick with us. We're going to end the show per normal, and we're gonna raid another channel. And please, please, please smash the follow buttons on them. So, thank you guys, and as we always love to say, we'll see you in the new world.